Welcome to the Berlin Drawing Room.
Hi. Okay, I'm gonna go check the chat. I saw that many people wrote and have questions. Okay. Variety of watercolor tubes, acrylic paints. Watercolor from the tubes, it is good for this technique. Just go with that. If you have white in that set, you're set. And watercolors, acrylic, a tube of white gouache. Yes, I will show how to mix the white with the watercolors. And I Cindy from Houston. You can also use acrylics. Like if you have acrylics, just use acrylics instead of, if you have watercolors and white, you can mix the watercolors with the white. If you don't have the white, but you have acrylics, go for the acrylics, it's easier. Okay, yes. You can't really mix the white acrylic with watercolors because they are two different mediums and it wouldn't work in the same way. So just use the acrylics, that's better. Should I use my watercolor or acrylic brushes for gouache painting? Acrylic brushes. If you have synthetic round brushes, those are the best. Hi LP. The other participants are locked because I'm recording only the demo cam for privacy. You can go in gallery mode if you want to see them. I have watercolors, never heard of gouache. If you have watercolors, just go with watercolors very dense. Gouache is the cousin of watercolor. It's the same medium. So watercolor is made with pigment and Arabic gum and it's transparent. Gouache is pigment, Arabic gum, and then mineral medium to make it opaque. So they are very, very similar. When I buy a kit, what should I buy, color or white? If you're a beginner with gouache, what I recommend is the cheapest thing on the market is this thing, is the Caran d'Ache box. It is kind of like a huge box of watercolors and you can use it for gouache. It's very practical, very cheap. And if you're just starting, this is good. Or the one that Pat has, the jelly gouache, that is very popular on TikTok and other social media. So if you want, you can use that. If not, you can also just use watercolors and white. And I'm also gonna show you how to mix watercolors and white on the first layer. This being said, what we're gonna do today, we're gonna paint a flower, a pretty simple one. The idea is more to understand the principle of gouache painting and a little bit of principle of painting 3D elements. I'm gonna share with you both the Dropbox link of the image and then the image itself in the chat so people can figure out which one works best for them. Okay, so this is the Dropbox link for people that can open Dropbox. And then this is the file for people that can download the file from the chat. So figure out which one works best for you. Okay, we're gonna do only the flower. We're not gonna do the pebbles. We're gonna focus on the flower. Okay, so step one, we're gonna do a very delicate drawing in pencil just so we don't have to work on the empty page. Oh wait, no, let's let's do it with the pencil. I think it's easier. So when we draw a flower, just a logistic thing, and people please mute yourselves because if not, okay. So what I was saying. So when we draw flowers, one common mistake in rendering flowers is that we think that flowers are flat because we are conditioned to, the primary school way of drawing flowers, where we draw the flowers like this. And, it's just flat. It's like a slice of flower. Flowers in reality, they are 3D. They are like a carved sphere of volumes. So we want to keep that in mind even when we draw. So I'm gonna start with the center of the flower, and then from the center of the flower, I'm gonna cut the line of the, like where the volume, the curve of the central part is. I'm gonna do the details. I don't have to do details now because I'm gonna do the details painting anyway. And then the petals around, they don't look all the same, and they all have kind of a fold in the center, because they're like, if you look at the petal on the left, you can see it well, they sometimes fold in the center. So always mark the folds in the petals that you are drawing, because that will help you a lot to remember where to put the darker color. And then here we have a petal that comes forward like this. And again, mark the curve in the middle. And then we have this petal behind here. And again, this petal too has this kind of fold in the center like this. So you can tell that how the volume, like this goes inside, this goes forward. This is important, very important to keep in mind. And like here in the center, it goes like this, the curve. And then we have this smaller petal here at the bottom, like this. And again, here the curve is like that. Okay, so give you a couple of minutes to sketch your drawing, and then we're gonna move to the color. Is there a difference between tempera paints and gouache in terms of result? It depends on tempera. Tempera, technically, it's a different, like traditionally tempera is applies to tempera all'uovo, or egg tempera, which is a different kind of mixture of pigment and medium that has this proteiny egg or synthetic egg medium to it. Gouache has this characteristic of that you are able to reactivate it after you put the color on paper to make the blending. Tempera, it depends on the brand and the specific medium, how much is water soluble and reactivatable, whatever is that word. I can't do the drawing much darker, but I think that if I'm not moving the hand, the camera should focus well enough. Do the drawing how you feel, don't worry. There is no right or wrong in the drawing. Like we are drawing a flower to have an excuse to color something with gouache and understand how to use gouache. So don't worry about the drawing too much. What colors do we need? We will mix the colors as we go, but as you can see from the picture, like the colors you see in the picture, so red, white, yellow, brown, but we will mix them together. Norma, can you see the image in the chat? I posted both the Dropbox link and the image itself. I can copy the link again and post it again in the chat. Okay, so while you finish the drawing, I'm gonna show how to mix the watercolors, the gouache with the watercolor. So I have some leftover white here, so I'm gonna start with that. So basically, what you want to do when you work with gouache and watercolor is this. Wait, let me do it this other way. So you want to mix your water. What is this? Oh. You want to mix your color with the watercolor first. So in this case, I'm gonna go with the magenta. So first you want to make your watercolor color. I'm gonna mix the magenta and a little bit of ultramarine blue. I'm gonna do the demo how to mix the color also for the people with the gouache. This is to show for the people with the watercolor and the white, okay? So I'm gonna make the color. Once I get the color of the tone that I like, of the chromatic value that I like, I'm gonna mix the white with it. And so the color is gonna become slightly lighter. I don't have to mix a lot of white, just a little bit to make the color opaque and more dense, okay? Like this. And you want your gouache to be like, I'm gonna show it here on the side. You want your gouache to be quite dense and opaque because like the not too watery, even with the first layer in this case. So I'm gonna just be, let's see, how are we gonna do this? Okay, just not to waste this color. I'm gonna do some petals with this and some petals with the other. So then the first thing that I want you to do is just do a flat base on the petals with a medium tone color. So not with the lighter tone of the color, but with the medium tone. And this is a painting principle that it's quite good to follow, whatever you're painting. So always start from the medium tone. And then you can put the lights and the dark over it. So, see, the reason why I said the drawing is not that important, because the moment you do the first layer, you're already covering all the drawing you did before. So the drawing is just so you don't have to approach the empty page, but in itself, it's not that relevant. And I'm gonna put a little bit of dark color here on the edge and on the the central part, then on the other edge, like this, and then a little bit here of this pattern. Okay, so this was to show the gouache with the watercolor. When you're mixing the gouache, so if you have this palette or something else, what you want to do, it's similar. So you want to start with the water, and then I'm gonna get magenta and a little bit of blue. And again, we want the color mixture to be quite dense, not too liquid, kind of like yogurt. And if you're struggling to pull the color from the pan, put some water and let it soak. Let the pan soak with the water. Like this. Like this. So see, this is slightly darker. Let me put a little bit more magenta.
G, is it possible for you to turn your palette around so we could see the colors that you're mixing? Because the screen only shows parts.
Yes, I'm mixing magenta. And you can't really see the colors because they're very dirty anyway. So just.
But I have your same kit.
Okay, the magenta is the, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth one, the one between the brown and the pillar box red. But I can do this, but I need to fit the drawing. So yeah, I can do this. So yeah, this is slightly darker, but it's okay. But the thing is, it needs to be this same kind of density. So now that I mix this color, I'm gonna go over again. I'm gonna go over the petals with this tone. And it's okay if it's dark, don't worry. It's better to start dark and then blend with the lighter colors on top anyway. So this is just a flat base that we're gonna use before doing the rest. You don't have to do the petals of 2 different colors. They're just different colors because I mixed with 2 different palettes. With the brush strokes, try to follow the shape of the pattern of the petal. Okay, I touched some white there. Okay, so this is your base for the flower. I think this one, I mean, a little bit bigger. Oh, this petal is way bigger. Better. Okay, so first color, do this. I'm gonna leave you 5 minutes. What brand paint is the cheap one you recommended? Karan Dash Wash set of 50. In Europe, at least, this is not too expensive. No idea about the US price. Bye, Helen. Have a nice day. Okay, are we done with the base? Sort of. I see people nodding, so I'm gonna assume yes. So this was my, let's say, this was my medium color. So what I want to put over this now is a light tone. So to do the light color, basically what I'm gonna do is just mix the white with the leftover color that I used before. This is a trick that makes your life easier. You mix the colors over the colors you mixed before. So I have this leftover color here. I'm gonna take some white from my tube and just drop it there. And then I'm gonna mix everything together, and I'm gonna use this color to start shaping the flower. So I'm gonna get, and now the color that I'm gonna mix needs to be slightly more liquid because I want it to blend well with what is below. So slightly more liquid than the previous mix. And then with this color, I'm gonna go over the petal and I'm gonna try to shape the fold. So for example, here, this petal is lighter in the center because this part of the petal comes forward. So I'm gonna put the color here in the center. Don't worry about the lines, the stripes on the petals. We're gonna do those later. So now just focus, let's just focus on the tonal values. So like this and up to the edge here. So this is the lighter part on this petal. And then I'm gonna go and do the same, putting a little bit more white because it feels too dark. And then I'm gonna put some here because this area is lighter too, like this, and then a little bit here on the edge. And then a little bit here on the edge outside too. As you can see, my colors are all more muted than the reference, but that's my personal curse. I don't like very bright colors, so all my colors tend to be very muted. And then this petal too, just observe where the lighter areas are and put the color there, and that will render the volume of the flower and the petals like this. And then here, this one too, all this area here is the lighter one, like this. And then this one, lighter part here, and then lighter part here at the top, like this. Okay. You can apply this on the dry base. If your base is not dry, you can dry it up with a hair dryer. You can also apply it if it's still slightly wet. It will blend a little bit. That's okay too. So it doesn't have to be a strong contrast with the colors, with the color we put before. It can be a soft contrast, okay? And then again, with a little, even with a little bit more water, I'm gonna use this in the center for the areas that are a little bit more in the shadow, like here. This side, it's slightly darker, like this. And then a little bit here in the center. Then I have to do the white, the yellow at one point, but not now. So I can mix it like this. Like this. Okay. So I'm gonna give you some minutes to put the light color. Okay, how is going with the light? Good? Okay, so what we're gonna do now, so like we're trying to cover all the main tonal values. So this was our medium dark, let's say, and this has been our light. And I'm just gonna put some yellow here in the center. Then later I'm gonna shape as the inner part of the flower. But so, you know, so it's done. We don't have to think about it anymore, even if the water becomes dirty. All the yellow that we need is there. What I'm gonna do now, I am going to, since again, my flower is also pretty muted, but I think for the contrast, it's gonna be easier to mix it this way. I'm gonna get some pillar box red. So, you know, the red, this kind of red. And again, I'm mixing it over the things that I was mixing before. So it's not pure pillar box, it's mixed with the leftover color from before. And so a tiny bit of white and a tiny bit of darker color. And it's very dense. And I'm gonna use this to do some of the texture of the flower in the lighter, in the medium light areas. So I'm gonna put it like this here, just to add a little bit more texture to the flower before we blend everything together. So I'm only gonna do it here in these areas, like this. And then the same one, I'm gonna put it here. It's everything, like all the colors that I'm doing tonight are super dark. It's my soul that it's so dark. Or something. Yeah, this is supposed to be like this. I don't know why I put it over here. It's so dark. It's okay. I'm just adding an extra color to have more colors to blend later, basically. More colors to blend means that the result it's a little bit more vibrant. And the same thing here. Like this. And then a little bit here too. And then a little bit here. So not all over, always just put it again. Let's not cover everything. And then I can also already have it here. Just to finish the shape of this thing. Like this. Okay. So just to give it a little bit more more texture and color. And I'm gonna do this right away because so it's the same step. So adding a little bit more pigment. And because for the next step, this is the step that only the people that have gouache can do, because with acrylics, you can't really reblend. But the idea is that now we kind of blend all the colors together before doing the lines and the shadow points and the highlights. So what I want you to do is get a piece of paper towel, and then your brush needs to be wet, damp, but not super wet. And what you want to do is just go, you should have, at this point, you should have enough color on your petals that if you do this, you don't rub the paper, but you blend the colors with each other. So it becomes kind of like a soft gradient. See, something like this. So try to do this, like to do this blending, you need to have enough color on the paper. If you try to do this and like you're rubbing the paper, you need to put a little bit more color, more dense color on the paper, okay? So you need to be able to blend the colors with each other without rubbing the paper below, basically. That's why we also did the other layer with the second red, to have even more paint on the paper. And ideally, you still want to be able to see all the different tonal values in the petal, even without the highlights. We're going to do the highlights later, but something like this. So very, very soft, but just putting everything together. So take your time, blend the colors together. If you feel that there are some areas where you want a little bit more pigment, go with a little bit more pigment and then blend it. This is the more like fun, free-form part. So just play around with the colors. These are all the medium tones, okay? None of these is it's a highlight or a shadow. This is just chromatic values that you see on the petals, okay? So don't worry about doing it right or wrong. We're still not shaping too much at this point. I'm putting a little bit more bright red because I'm self-conscious about my sad flowers. Why do I always paint sad stuff? It's the goth spirit that never leaves me. Come on, a little bright, a little bit bright. Something like this. So play around in this part. People that are working with acrylics, you can play around to putting more pigment, less pigment, to see what happens. When you're done, then we're gonna move on to the highlights and the shadows. I'll give you 5 minutes to play around with the colors of the petal. No white, no shadow points now. It's just the color of the petal. So there are so many different reds and browns. Try to mix them as you prefer. How is going? Do we have our colored base? Sort of. Okay. I'm gonna start doing the highlights, okay? Yeah? Okay. Sort of. So I'm gonna take a smaller brush now. Just because so it's easier to do the smaller areas, basically. So when you work with white, one thing you need to be aware of, there are two kinds of white in gouache. There is zinc white and there is titanium white. Zinc white is called also mixing white, and it's not very opaque, like it's not very covering, like it is medium coverage. Titanium white is the super opaque white. So what we want to do, we can also use just the zinc white, the mixing white, but sometimes if you want to have very, very strong highlights, using titanium white makes your life easier. I'm gonna use the zinc white today because I have the feeling that most of the people here have the generic mixing white. So I'm just gonna go with the generic mixing white too. And so I want you to remember what we said before, that we can modulate the coverage of gouache depending how liquid or how dense it is. So I'm gonna show you for each petal how you can use this to render the different levels. So I can start with very watery gouache, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and do the highlight lines, like kind of like this. And you're gonna see now that it's wet, it looks extremely strong, but you will see once it's dry that it becomes, it kind of blends with the whole thing better. So this is just to mark my highlights. And I'm gonna make them here too. Try not to rub the petal while you're doing this. Try to just tap, tap, tap with the brush. Because if you rub the petal, then you're gonna mix the white with everything else, like we were doing before with the blending. So you want to go a little bit soft, like this. And see, you can see it already here, that when it dries, it becomes less covering. And with this very liquid, I'm also gonna start doing the edge, because not the whole edge is opaque. So I'm gonna start with this more watery white to work on the edge, and then I'm gonna make the edge stronger where I need the edge to be stronger, basically. And then I'm gonna do the same on the other petals. So again, working on the texture, doing the edge. This is very liquid. Remember that this is like melted ice cream white. Okay. And then here on the edge. So you just go around all the areas where you see light with this watery color, and you try to get this pattern going. And you can fade it out with the small dots. That makes it cuter if you want. And then again, so the elements were marked. It doesn't have to be too white now, because I want to be able to go with a stronger white on top. I want to have more than one white going on my petals. So try to keep it watery. Don't push too hard now. And then here. Again, remember to just tap, tap, tap the color. Don't rub, because if you rub with the brush, you're gonna basically blend all the colors together that we mixed before, which it is an interesting effect, but maybe not the one you're going for. So we are tapping it in like this. And the same thing here on this side. And this edge. And a little bit here. And then a little bit here. Remember that these lines are very important, because they also mark the way the petals are bending in space. So try to be precise with your white patterny lines. And the complicated thing with flowers or this kind of subjects usually is trying to differentiate between what is the color of something and what are the shadows and lights on something. that's why we try to divide the different steps. And now with this, I'm also gonna go here in the center. Again, still liquidy. Here I left a little bit of the white of the page, so since it was a strong edge, there is also that base. This still at the watery white stage. This is still not the strong white. And then here. Little bit of highlight here. I think that's it for this step of white. Seems good enough to me. This petal, as you can see, I didn't put much because this petal is mostly in the shadow. There aren't many light parts. I could put maybe a little bit here in this part because there is the transparency, and a little bit here on the edge, but that's it basically. So these are the highlights that I want to put on my flower, like intermediate highlights. So with this soft white, diluted white. And let me get another small brush to do the shadow point. Or I could use this for the shadow point and then this for the... Can I go with the dark? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna start, prepare the dark color. So for the dark, you need a little bit of contrast. So I'm gonna use, like, the fastest way to make a dark color for this is just take either some paints gray or black and mix it with the leftover color you have. So that's always the solution, like mix over the color you have left. So, or you can also mix, if you don't have paints gray or black, you can also mix maybe a little bit of blue and brown in that red to make it even darker. You like experiment with the blue, the browns, or the paints gray, all these colors to find a way to have a dark color for your dark shadows. And this is the shadow point, so it needs to be small. We need to be very delicate with it. So I'm gonna start from here. We're literally just gonna put it only where the darker lines and darker shadows are. So kind of like this, in a complementary way to our white. We're gonna do some more blending later, so don't worry about it being perfect now, like this. And that's the cool thing. The thing that I really like about gouache is this element of that you can rework it as much as you want. So you can work on your shadows and your highlights in a very structured way. And then you can use the blending to soften the transition between things in some areas. And I think that this is quite cool, like this ability to be able to rework what you're working on over and over. It makes it, of course, like if you have experience with watercolor, it makes it less stressful than watercolor because you know you always have wiggle room to, you know, to adapt it or to correct things. Or here I'm gonna make a darker shadow under the center of the flower because there is the shadow of the center of the flower, like this. And then again here another stronger shadow because it's the projected shadow of the petal above, down below, like here. And here too. So don't be shy with your shadows, don't be shy with your colors. Remember that, you know, we can rework it later as long as we put all these lights and all these shadows in the correct spot. It's gonna be okay. Like in the area where we see them and not just random. Like this. And then a little bit inside too. I can reinforce the shadow here along the edge of the center of the flower, a little bit here below, a little bit here in the center. Not too much, but again, enough to create a little bit of variation of tone. And then what you can do before we put the small white highlights, again, you can blend these two colors that we just put. When you blend the highlights and the shadow point, the rule of thumb, compared to how we were blending before the general color of the petal, when we blend these things, we want to leave a little bit visible the texture of what we did before. So We're not, what I always say is like, don't blend all of it, just blend a little bit and then leave the visible brush stroke you did before. Don't just erase everything, don't melt everything. So it's more like to blend the transition. So like this, see, I leave part of the brush stroke as it is. It's just more a softer blending. So where the highlights are stronger, I don't really touch it too much. Like this. And of course, because I'm doing the shadows with the black and the paints gray, the goth vibe, it's still going strong here, still going strong. My goth flower. So just a little bit, not too much, okay? Just to make it vibrant, but without, I don't know, without losing everything that you did before. So. Soft transitions as much as you can. And then same thing everywhere. Remember to clean the brush when between blending the dark shadow points and blending the highlights. Because if you don't clean the brush, then you're gonna just, again, blend everything together too much. And this is another thing that I feel it's important to remember, this feeling of the feeling between having something completely blended and then having something partially blended, being able to still see the strong highlights or still see the transition points. I think it's something that with time you develop a little bit of sensitivity to it, and it gives texture to the whole painting, to be able to see a little bit of clean brush strokes and a little bit of strong highlights and the transition between the two. Because sometimes, yeah, nature is like that. So this is the blending part of the whole thing. And then the last part, the last thing to do, let me drink. And I'm gonna do it now, so then I can leave you like 5 minutes to finish your flower before the round of feedback with your own time. But the last thing you want to do after this is to do the super sharp highlights. And the super sharp highlights, you want to do them with basically without diluting the white. So the white that we were using before. This is like soft highlights because we diluted it with water, so it blended with the thing below. Now I'm gonna do the hardcore highlights, which are gonna be super dense white. And let's hope it goes. This white is already dry. And to do this, I suggest you use another, let me get some water, 1 second, some clean water for the white. So if you do like I was trying to do and you mix the white with the dirty water, it's never gonna look white. So just get a little bit of clean water and let's see if we can get a decent white now. Oh, okay, managed. So now with your strong white, you want to go on only on those beats where it's super, super sharp white. And even on these edges, it's not all over, it's only on in some parts. Like here on this petal, the sharp highlight, white highlight, it's only here on the upper side there and on the other side here, but that's it. Or like in this petal here, this is the one that has the strongest edge. So it's here. Going all around like this. And on this petal, it's only here on the upper edge. This way. And here again, it's only on the upper edge. Like this. And then on the center again. When I do the edge here, don't do a continuous line because it's a curly edge. So just do it like on the upper curves, and that will give the curly vibe of the edge. It's another trick. And then here, some highlight. Like this. And then inside, if you look like this side, on the side towards me, the inside is slightly lighter. So I'm gonna put a little bit more sharp white in between the dots. And a little bit. Something like this. Okay, so take your time to play around with these last 2 steps of the shadow points, the highlight, the general blending, and then the small white highlights. I'll give you 5 minutes to do your job, and then who wants, not mandatory, absolutely free, we can do a round of feedback and showing what you have done. What have you done? The extra thing, okay, wait, I'm gonna show you while you're finishing. This is extra, you don't have to do this, but it just came to my mind and I think it's a good thing to show. because this damn flower has the light edge, and the light edge, you can't really see it if the background is white. So one thing that you can do is do like a very watery wash of the dirt at the bottom of your palette. So literally, we no worry about whatever color is it. It's just a background. And if you want, you can color, you can put a contrasting background around the flower after you're done at the end. So it doesn't have to be very dark. It's just to, sometimes you have some things that are easier to see, or to understand, to read visually, if you have a darker background. And in this case, the light edge is one of those. So if you want, as a final step, you can color the background around the petals too. And if you're using a very watery wash, and you used a thicker color along the edge for the white along the edge, that will make it way easier for you to color along the edge without, it's like it creates like a, oh, what is the word? Diga. Yeah, like a stopping point for the colors, so you can use that. So the thickness of your white becomes a stopping point, and you can do the background quite easily. But see, this way the white pops out a lot more. And you can, depending on which paper you're using, you can also do as I'm doing, which is like put water on the background and then throw color over it. That's also a technique that makes doing backgrounds more easy, especially when they are random backgrounds like the one that I'm doing, like random colors. Yeah, so we can see the edges of the flower a little bit better like this. It doesn't have to be very dark, it's just to give a little bit of contrast to the flower. Okay, I'm gonna stop touching this. Okay, so now whoever survived this whole process of this flower and wants to share, we're gonna use the reaction function of raise your hand. So if you want to show me what you have done and you want to share it, just raise the hand. Okay, let's go. So Marichka, unmute yourself. And so usually when we do the feedback on the work during my classes, the students say one thing that you understood, that you liked, that it, that worked, and one thing that you struggle with, or you will do different next time, or you will change. Go.
So this is my first time with gouache, and my biggest struggle was mixing with watercolor because I couldn't figure out how to add more color without getting the gouache in my watercolors.
Yeah. Wait,
so I was hoping you could give some advice on that, because I kept having to switch brushes to add more color. So that's why mine is more pink than goth burgundy like yours. So yeah, it was interesting watching come together, and I've never blended like the way you put the layers down first, and then watching the colors blend, I really liked. And then figuring out how the highlights were going to work was a little more challenging, but it's a good first experiment, I think. Like, it was a good learning experience.
Yeah. And please don't be conditioned by my goth colors. My students know that I'm hopeless. You can use pretty happy colors. Don't worry. It's like I am the problem in this.
But the mixing was the big challenge. If you could show how to do that with watercolors, I wasn't really clear how you kept the gouache out.
There is no, I showed that at the beginning. The first color I did was mixing with the gouache and the watercolor. But if you saw how I mix at the beginning, there is no way to not put the white over your watercolors. You just do it. And then at the end of your session, you go to the sink with a bigger brush and you wash your palette. So you take the surface layer off and you clean your palette. But there is no way to avoid it. Sometimes a solution is to have a watercolor palette, which is dedicated to be mixed with the gouache, so you don't worry about dirtying the colors. But I understand that this method of mixing with the watercolor is not ideal for people that like to keep their watercolor set clean and set like organic.
No, it was good to learn. And I think I got a little bit of the textures that you were showing, not all of them, but there's a little bit of curvature that I can see. So that was nice to see.
Good. I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Patricia. And then we have Hilar. Unmute yourself. Wait. Okay. Oh, look at that. You were doing it like with the watercolors, right?
No, actually, it was acrylic gouache.
Ah, that acrylic gouache you said you had. Nice. Yeah, very vibrant colors. I love it.
Thank you. Well, yeah, they look better on the screen. They're definitely a little muddy and muted, but it was a great first time. And again, you are an excellent instructor.
Oh, thank you. But so one thing, like the others, one thing that you like and one thing that you struggled, you will do different.
I would definitely go to my car and get my better brushes. But having good pointy brushes, you know, an artist is only as good as their tools.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It was lovely to have you here. And then Mario.
Now I do this. How do I do this?
Yeah, you're unmuted. You're ready.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to flip the screen though.
Just raise the thing in front. No, you muted yourself now. Just raise the thing in front of the camera is the easier way. Oh, okay. So Aditi, go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, for a beginner, I think it went okay. I like the idea of, you know, from the beginning telling us the shape of the flower and how the lines bend and how it's, you know, naturally sometimes we try to do like 2-dimensional instead of 3-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
So and I thought that was interesting that we could apply it into other aspects of painting or drawing or whatever. So, and obviously definitely struggle with blending and so many other things, but I had a great time and I appreciate it. So I think
That's
I'm
good.
gonna keep learning as much as I can.
I'm happy to hear that. I think that I was telling somebody today that the most important thing is not having a perfect result every time you practice, but enjoying the time you spend practicing or drawing. Because, you know, as humans, creative endeavors, there shouldn't be production oriented. They should be pleasant as a process, regardless of the result. So I'm happy that you had fun. Okay, thank you, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Frederica.
Yes, this is mine.
And
Yeah, I always like very much your technique and how you always explain it, like going from the midtones to the highlights and dark tones. And I think it works quite well even without much practice. So it's the result is quite satisfying. And I always, as always, I struggle with getting the right amount of color from the beginning. So when you say take the rest of the color, then I had to mix a new color and it never looked the same. And it always has a different consistency. And this is, yeah, I think it's all a matter of practice, of course, but this is my biggest struggle today.
Yeah, I get it. Because like, usually the rules applies like the same rules that we usually have in watercolor, which is do a lot of it because it's not an expensive technique. We're not using like super fancy oils or whatever. Just do a lot of this, like a lot of colors, and so you can work with the leftover. But yeah, it is something you have to kind of build up the habit too. As some people are leaving, I'm gonna leave you my contacts if you want to contact me. And like, sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt the feedback round because I see people leaving and I want to say goodbye before they leave. What I always say, once you're my student forever. So if you need feedback about something or if you want to show me what you're doing, just come to my social media. And I'll put you all the links here. There is also the link of the Berlin Drawing Room where there are workshops you can do to me. And there is the link for the tip because people always ask that too. So I finally made that. So Frederica, yes, thank you so much. And then we have Rosalia that I saw you, Pat. I saw you. I'm gonna put you in the pipeline of the resident. Rosalia and kids. Let's see.
Yes. So this is so show yours. This is our drawing. I mean, I struggle a little to follow your 3-dimension style. I mean, mine looks like more childish, but it was really nice class. I mean, I really like what you said, as other students also said, when you explained that we start with the mid-tones and then we can add the light ones and the dark ones to give this depth. That was very interesting. Also, it was nice to use this material because I could see that you can add different layers on top. It's not like the aquarella that it really is.
Yes. Yes.
So this was really interesting. You want to show yours? This is my daughter's one.
Oh.
So it was really nice. Thank you so much for the class. It was wonderful. And since we are now in Berlin, we will be joining more classes with you for sure.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, my son wants to show his, although he followed his own.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. You know, red and green are complementary colors. You chose well. Those two colors are happy when they are together.
Yeah, and all of this red is the door and this green is the trunk of the car.
Okay, that's good. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And then Aishani.
So, since I was using acrylics, I wasn't able to get the amount of thickness that I was supposed to on the colors. So the white didn't turn out to be very strong, but it gives a light highlight. So that's it gives a nice effect, I suppose. I did like your method of highlighting the flower with the whites. It made it look very colorful and bright. So
Yeah.
I'm
Good.
very sorry. It looked very nice. Something I will try to do next time slightly differently would be layering of the white for highlights and in general layering for the colors. But this was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Shani. You did a good job. And even if it went a little bit together, you can still see the volume of the petals. It's softer, less sharp, but it's there. So good job.
You.
Thank you, Shani. Okay, and then Pat, go.
I had a difficult time. I don't know if you can, I lost my video here.
Yeah, it's okay. I can see it.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
I had a difficult time with the shading. I lost the folds of the flower. I didn't quite get the petals, how they fold up on itself with the shading. I missed that part. But I really like the layering and then the blending, like putting the color down and then be able to blend it. I like that a lot. And as with the last time I worked with you, I really doubted myself the whole time I was doing it until I got finished with it, and I'm pleasantly surprised at how it turned out. So thank you. I have to trust you.
Thank you so much. But it is like this, like you shouldn't have judgment about what you're doing until you put the final highlight and the final shadow point, because that's when you kind of shape the whole thing together. So thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
For the feedback. Okay, people, this was lovely. Oh, wait, we have Judith. Okay, I saw you.
So I have to say I like the blending, and but then I noticed, as somebody already mentioned, that I didn't want to use my good aqua watercolor brushes. I used different brushes, and it didn't work with the highlights. I wasn't able to do fine lines, and it was more like blobby something. And yeah, but yeah, it's completely different to watercolor, but yeah, that's mine.
Good. Yeah, but you don't have to use expensive brushes like this one, the basic Da Vinci green brushes which are also good for watercolor, but they are like synthetic, rigid, but they have a nice tip. I think they are the best for gouache. It's very good. And gouache is not like acrylic, like in the sense that it doesn't ruin the brushes because it is water soluble. So even if it dries up on the brush, you put it under a little bit of like slightly warm water, and then you can, like, it doesn't damage a brush the way acrylic or oil would. So it's like the bigger cousin of watercolor. So your brushes are gonna be okay. Don't worry for next time.
So
Thank you.
me.
Okay, and Tia. Tia.
Thank you. I'll show it to you. I don't know how my camera is, but.
Nice. So I would go one thing that it worked and one thing that you would do different.
Let me see. What I would do different, because I didn't have the gouache, so I'm doing watercolor, but I'm trying to follow along, and you give great directions, even though I'm using a different media. So I'm trying to, but whatever you're saying and how you're doing it, I was trying to follow along, so that was very good. And I'm going to get the gouache so I can watch your video, the recording, and follow along to do it properly. But even though I was using a different medium, I was able to follow along when you were saying darker and go back and everything. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm very happy that you manage even with a different medium. Good to know.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, people. We managed to get through this gouache painting. I realized that compared to other classes, I kind of went with a fast pace, but it's because gouache, it's a little bit more time consuming than drawing or just a couple of layer of watercolor. So at one point I was like, oh my God, we're not gonna be in time. And I started rushing. So I am sorry for the people that need that have a slower processing pace. I am aware that today I kind of went faster than usual. But as I said before, this class is going to be at one point put online by the Berlin Drawing Room, so keep an eye on that. If you do other, whatever you do, whatever practice you do, and you want feedback or support, just hit me in my Instagram DMs. And don't be shy about it. I'm happy to support you in your creative journey. And yeah, that's it. So to wrap up the class, what I always ask is everybody unmute yourselves so we can all say goodbye together. And then I'll close the call. So everybody unmute yourself. All unmute. You don't need face. I just need your voice to say goodbye to each other.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.